What does a sociopathic consulting detective have to do with the Bible? Let's check it out. Hello, welcome to the Christy Grace Scarlet Pen channel. I am an author, creativity chaser, and book lover. Today, I'm running you through my thoughts on Sherlock Holmes and the Needle's Eye. I'm gonna need to check the Bible verses. Hopefully I'll put any Bible verses or chapters or sections that I reference today in the comments so you can check them out for yourself, because that is very important when hearing reviews and when hearing thoughts on things like Bible passages and stories. However, today is about the book where Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson find a way to travel back in time, a time machine, and they get these mysterious mysteries that they have to solve in Bible times and throughout the Bible stories. There are 10 where we follow, it's the mysteries that you never asked for but are getting anyway. Some of it is pretty obscure. Let me tell you some of them. So some of them come from really classic Bible stories like David and Goliath, or the Paul and Silas in prison praising and opening all of the doors and chains. Those guys are relatively common, especially within the Christian community, but they're taking on a completely different flavor. So asking the mystery and question of why did David pick up 5 stones when he was going to kill Goliath? Why the 5 stones? Why did he pick those stones? What is the answer behind that? Or another one was, why did Jesus delay when he was coming to see Lazarus when Lazarus was dying? And so those are relatively popular, but there are some really obscure. Why did Jesus mention one Zechariah when actually it was another one that everyone thought he was supposed to be referencing? So it varied, and within these there was a mystery that you literally would never have thought of otherwise. Most people, especially when they're reading the Bible, most who are not theologians, I think that's the word, who don't delve into the proper theology of the Bible, they're not asking questions like, why was that person in the genealogy of Christ when they shouldn't have been? Or, you know, those sorts of questions. We're not always asking those, and we're not always wanting to know the answers to those questions. So it was, yeah. First of all, I want to say I love Sherlock Holmes. I love the character of Sherlock Holmes. And so him and Dr. Watson going to Bible was a huge sell for me. So that was really big a plus. I liked the characters, obviously. When these guys went back in time to these Bible scenarios, half the time they were able to be seen by people around them, and the other half of the time they weren't. And so they were just sort of observing, and they didn't have any impact whatsoever to the people or atmosphere around them. That was really interesting to see. Sometimes they could interact with these people from, you know, Bible times, and sometimes they didn't and they couldn't. There was 10 stories, and usually with every one, they would be sent back to 2 different places for context. The frustrating part of this book for me, and I think for a lot of people who pick up this book and don't recognize what it is and what it's supposed to be, is that this book really delves into the theology of some of these questions. So unless you're actually interested in a lot of the theological questions in the Bible, this book may not be for you. It delves into some really academic ideas and thoughts and research. There's been a lot of research in this book, so props. But it is a very sort of academic look at some of these things. So yes, we get to see Holmes and Watson actually being there when it was things like Paul and Silas in prison, or Jesus' temptation. That was phenomenally written. But also a lot of these stories are not those experiences. A lot of these stories are Holmes and Watson back in London. It's really an intellectual exercise. They're trying to determine by way of discussion what the answer is. So they got to experience, and we got some action in there because they got to go to these places and do these things and say these things and talk to these people sometimes, but also at the same time, a lot of the book was like intellectual discussions between Holmes, Watson, sometimes other people around, but it was a lot of theological discussions. So it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. And to be honest, some parts were kind of dry if I was not in a theological mood. It did open my eyes though to a lot of things, maybe some things that I hadn't thought of before or hadn't decided to look into on my own. And one of the really cool things about this book was actually though that at the back there are these investigative study questions. So you can essentially, there's room to write down, but I wouldn't anyway, but you can essentially go through and treat each story as a devotional or as an investigative educational exercise where there's questions at the back. It gives you references to go check out in the Bible for the stories. It gives you, please read Hebrews 4:16. What should our frame of mind be when we're tempted? So you're able to treat this as a devotional or as just an enjoyable read or as a theological study. But overall, I have to say, like, even though there was some challenging times, I really enjoyed it though overall. Their first-hand experiences in some of these situations was really well written. I was really impressed with the way that some of these moments were handled. Some of them were pretty intense. Or even when they were interacting with these people in Bible times, I think that the author did a really great job of handling those in a really good way. It was just more so the intellectual discussions behind those scenes that was a little bit on the more frustrating side when it came to readability. One of the other things that I was super confused about was the title, Sherlock Holmes and the Needle's Eye. Originally, I thought it might have something to do with the parable that Jesus told about the rich man and a camel passing through a needle's eye, which if you haven't heard that story or read that story, it's not as bad as it seems. Not just saying that if you're rich, too bad, you're out of luck. It's not how it works. Regardless of that, it had nothing to do with the title. Literally absolutely nothing to do with that. The title had something to do with the time machine itself, not anything else. So that was a little confusing, although as you got into the story and you really quickly realized what it was referring to, that was a minor thing. It was so small. Overall, Len Bailey, I think you did a great job writing the characters of Holmes and Watson, which are very well-known characters. The resolution was expected. It's like, some people, you're not going to be changed forever by experiences, and some people you are, and some people might be in between, and you just never know. But I was very happy with the way things worked out for Sherlock and Watson. It was a fun adventure to go on with them. I just would have preferred a little less theology and a little more of the adventure part. I think I gave this guy 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. I enjoyed it, but again, you have to be very interested in more theological questions and answers, but it was really fascinating. Some things I learned that I would never have learned otherwise, and I was very grateful. What is your favorite Sherlock Holmes story? Let me know down below. Like I said, the Bible references that I've made today, I will put in the link below just so that you can check them out on your own if you wanted to. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the adventures. Consulting criminal, no. Consulting criminal.